Let's get this Miata interior back together again. Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for the second part of our complete overhaul of this Miata's interior. You saw how bad it was last time. We got a lot more work to do. We got to put everything back together. The big thing we're going to do today is install that aftermarket wheel with a quick release, and to make it even more legit, we're going to keep the functionality of the horn and keep the airbag light off. Two big things. I do not like jumping in Miatas that have airbag lights flashing and non-functional horns because it is such a little vehicle. So on today's episode, we're gonna do just that, and probably some more in the interior here. So why don't we get in the garage, get some work done. Okay, time to get the steering wheel off. We gotta pull the steering wheel to pull this plastic section here on the steering column, then to get the hood off, the instrument cluster, and then to get this last piece of leather on the crash pad. So all this needs to come off. We're gonna wrap this crash pad, which is gonna look pretty cool. We're also putting a new steering wheel on, so that requires that one to come out. So everything's pretty easy. All these access panels come off with basically Phillips head screws. The steering wheel airbag section has 4 nuts holding it on the back of each of the wheel. You can see them in those recessed sections there. Those are 10 millimeter. And a little hint, turn your wheel 90 degrees, like so. That way you can access all these deep grooves. If not, you'll be moving your turn signal around, windshield wiper switches and everything to get access. So this is the best way to do it. Just turn your wheel just like that. So let's go ahead and pop those 4 nuts off, and then I'll show you how to get this steering wheel off the car. It should go without saying that the battery should be disconnected, so just disconnect your negative terminal on your battery. Here are those 4 10 millimeter nuts you need to take off. Now we can remove the airbag section of the steering wheel, and I'll show you how to do that. Simply pull it towards you like so. And we're gonna go ahead and disconnect it. This is your airbag. Go ahead and put that someplace where it won't blow up. The steering wheel bolt in the middle holding it on is a 21 millimeter bolt. So get your 21 millimeter socket. Let's break it loose. Sometimes these can be stuck on there pretty good. All right, once it breaks loose, go ahead and loosen it, but don't take it all the way off just yet. It's gonna save your face, literally, in a few seconds. Now, if you have a steering wheel puller, you know, I always advise to use that. It's pretty smart. I don't wanna use it. I think I can just yank this off like I've always done. So I kept that nut on there for a reason so the wheel doesn't come back and crush me. Let's go ahead and pull this steering wheel off. There we go, just like that, guys. Steering wheel removed from the Miata. Next up for the steering wheel, we gotta remove the clock spring here. And the reason being is we are gonna use the horn function because this is gonna still be a street car. I think a horn's pretty useful for a Miata. A lot of people don't see it when they look in their mirrors or when they don't look in their mirrors. So that ability to honk is pretty valuable. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that, just 3 Phillips screws. We're gonna pop that off. We're not gonna cut this wire because we're gonna need especially that green wire you can see in the middle there. That's the one for the horn. The airbag ones, I'm gonna show you how to deal with that. Since we're not gonna have an airbag on this vehicle, I'm gonna show you how to get rid of that airbag light along the way. It has to do with something down in here. Since we already have this all apart, it'll be easy to show you. But let's go ahead and remove that clock spring first. With those 3 screws removed, you can see you can now remove this entire stock assembly. What we're gonna do is slide it off, follow that wiring harness back down to separate the airbag and horn wires from the rest of the wires going down there. We're gonna cut those loose, and I'll show you what we're gonna do next with that harness to, again, eliminate the airbag light and to run our new wire for our horn. So we can still have a working horn with an aftermarket wheel, especially a quick release wheel like we're doing. So let's go ahead and pop this off, and I'll show you what I'm doing with the wiring harness. Here we have the switch assembly on the floor. You can see the wiring harness going back. Obviously we're going into here where the blue and orange connector is. So you're gonna trace that back. It's this ribbed kind of loom right here. You can see electrical tape holding it here. electrical tape holding it here. So we're gonna cut that electrical tape just to free that. You don't wanna mess with the rest of this wire, but you just wanna get that separate because we need to get the wires working in there. So there was a zip tie I cut back here. So let's go ahead and cut this electrical tape and free that wire from the rest of this harness. Since this connector is the same as the one you experienced at the steering wheel, with the addition of this ground, just disconnect these three. There's also this one ground wire here that's on this screw. You have to just straighten this tab at the end. It kind of passes through there, and then you can pull it straight out. That's it, guys. Our clock spring is fully removed with the entire harness, one working unit. Again, read the instructions there, the little caution message. You don't want to rotate this more than what it says, or it can ruin the clock spring itself. So let's set this aside in a safe place, but there is a fully functional clock spring we retained instead of cutting wires. Since that wiring harness is exactly the same, we're going to go back to our old steering wheel and cut this orange connector. This is our connector for the horn, so we're just going to snip it right here, and we're going to use that to install under the steering wheel column. Easy as that. We're going to obviously have to extend this, so we'll be using solder and a heat shrink wrap to make it a good connection. All right, we've got our connector we're going to be using. And I found some spare wire about the same gauge, and we're going to go ahead and connect the two. So we're going to take our newly fashioned plug and wire and plug that in back under the steering rack area where it goes. Here for ourselves. There we go. Easy peasy. So now we gotta run this new wire. We're gonna put our turn signal stock and everything back up. Run this pretty much back up the harness. So we'll go ahead and put our tape back in place, zip ties back in place, all like it was originally. And then basically on the stock assembly, once we install that, I'll show you what we're doing with our lovely wire here. And if you follow the orange clip to our now blue wire, you can see I used the exact same spots where the electrical tape was before to secure it to that harness. We're now going to install the turn signal stock rack and everything. So we'll put that back up there at this time. Turn signal stock is back in place. We're going to use these 3 Phillips head screws to secure it. And then I'm going to show you what we do with our wire. It's tucked here where it won't interfere with anything. We're going to shorten it a bit, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. So the next part of our wonderful plan is to create something that can attach here, use these existing screw holes and be metal to allow contact to have our horn work. So I basically did this paper clip right here. Used my vise to bend it around so we can put the screw through the eyelet right there. And we're gonna connect our wire that we made, that I've already gone ahead and stripped, to that paper clip, and just bending it the right way. We'll get the right length once I get everything lined up. It will be pointing it out like this and rubbing on the back of the hub. So we'll have that contact necessary for the horn to function. So let's go ahead and put that in place now. I'm gonna go ahead, and there we go. We've got our paper clip attached right there. I've gone and sanded this down to make sure there's no finish or anything on there that's gonna interfere with it actually making contact. So we should be good to go. You might have to tweak this out a little bit. If I remember, it's been a while since I've done one of these. Might need to bend this out a little bit so it contacts the back of the hub, but we should be good to go. But before we go further with attaching the steering wheel, we've got to put all this trim back on. So let's go ahead and put that new leather wrap portion on up here and the cowl. Key on, engine off. You can see our wonderful airbag light flashing away there. Now to get rid of that tricky airbag light that we saw flashing, you simply come under to the airbag control module, which is actually, if you look back in there, that kind of baby blue, you can see it way back in there. Well, anyway, you can pull this white connector out. You can see this loop in it right now, and that loop is actually an old zip tie I cut down to size. So you basically have to take that zip tie and put it in those 2 slots, loop it around, and that will disconnect the circuit. So you will no longer get an airbag light at all. And this is the cheapest fix. It costs you the price of 1 old zip tie. Just simply do that. As a preventative method, I'm also gonna wrap some tape around here to ensure it doesn't slide out of there, because if it slides out, your airbag light will come back and you'll have to disconnect all your dash components to access it again. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape around here and kind of keep it locked in place, but that's it. That's all you need to do to get rid of that airbag light. And to prove it, we'll go key on, engine off, and you won't see the airbag illuminate at all. It won't during the startup, and it won't flash at all during driving. Boom, easy fix. Time to put this all back together. And as you can see, here's some duct tape wrapped around to ensure that plastic zip tie doesn't slip out of that connection. And we are done, no more airbag light. Next up on the interior checklist is this old crash pad. It's a soft, kind of leather-coated part of the dash and the Miata that tends to crack. This one does have some mild cracking up here. Many of them are way worse than this, but once it starts, you know what happens. It's just gonna get worse. Does not look good in the car. So the solution for that is obviously try to find a good condition one. Nah, that's pretty challenging, pretty hard to do. So I actually sourced this one online. This company makes them specifically for the Miata, and you can see it has the blue stitching, which is gonna go well with our exterior color and the other interior touches we're doing. This is not gonna be an easy project, guys. I can already tell trying to stretch leather over a surface like this and make it lie flat, make it smooth. Other people are good at this stuff, but it's definitely not my cup of tea, but we're gonna give it hell anyway. Can't get any worse than how this looks, I guess, so. There's that. There's two sections. We're gonna have to cut out the vents, obviously. To adhere it, we do use contact cement, kind of paint it on this surface. We'll scuff this up a little bit too to help it kind of promote adhesion. And then we're gonna use this Loctite epoxy, the 5-minute epoxy, to do the edges in the back to kind of hold it even stronger, because contact cement's pretty good, but this is gonna be exposed probably to some sunlight, wind, you know, weather conditions. So I want it to hold up. So I'm probably not gonna document this process because it's gonna be a bunch of swearing and slow motion stuff, but let's cut back hopefully to it looking good on here. I'm gonna start with the little end piece first. This is a good place to start. Get that piece of leather fitted, cut the hole. Good practice for all we're gonna do. So let's knock this out and take care of business. So we've got the leather dash pad installed with the blue accent stitching, and overall it looks pretty damn good. Now you get some imperfections, some folding in the leather, but overall if you come back it looks really clean. Like it's an actual nice grayish black color. Crack I patched there, better than a crack I guess. But the leather dash pad does look cool. It's gonna go with all the other accent stitching like you have here and on the shift knob. So yeah, nice little touch as you can see. Really cool. And much better than that cracked vinyl piece we had before. So this interior is starting to look somewhat presentable, guys. Let's keep it going. On nearly every single NA Miata I've ever owned, this bottom metal plate has been missing. And the reason being is there are two plastic clips at the very bottom that usually break out. It's pretty heavy, it's metal. Those plastic clips just fatigue over the years and they fall out. So my solution has always been to use tape and kind of cover that whole section up so the wire isn't exposed. But this time I've used some heavy duty zip ties. I've actually drilled holes in the remaining plastic of the clip that's connected to the car and then zip tied it, pulled it tight, and it's on there really well, really sturdy. So I'm super happy how that came out. You don't have to get under there too often, so it's not too much of an inconvenience. Before there were just screws holding it in, but the zip ties will work. They didn't interfere with my pedal movement, so I'll trim these back. Obviously, maybe I'll keep them full length. Just for aesthetics, I'll keep them full length, make the car look even trashier than it. No, it is pretty trashy, but no, we'll trim those back. It should be good to go. But yeah, that's really looking good. As you can see, we have our new cowl on up here. And that's looking pretty stunning too. So yeah, it's all coming together pretty good. Time to get the wheel going on there. We're gonna put that hub on first. That piece locks on here, and then we're gonna have the section that actually allows the wheel to be released from the hub, and then the steering wheel itself. So let's get this thing together. Let's see if my paper clip modification and running a new wire allows the horn to work in the Miata. Woohoo! Yeah, buddy.